Good morning, Rabbi Rabotai. We are continuing on Masechet Berachot, and we are on Daf Mem Amud Bet 40b. That is 12 lines from the bottom by 2 dots. What the bracha is on Novlot, what are Novlot is the Gemara's discussion going to be right now. Now, the Mishnah mentioned that there's a machloket between Rabbi Yehuda and Chachamim, whether or not you make a bracha on min kilala, something that is a curse, something that has gone bad, whether or not you say bracha on it. But right prior to that, the Mishnah said, Al chomes, Val ha-novelot, Val ha-govai, on vinegar, on novlot, which we're going to see what it means exactly, and on govai, on grasshoppers, you make shakol niya bidvaro. And the Rabbi Yehuda said, anything that's considered a min klala, a type of klala, of curse or destruction, from language of kilkul, going bad, you don't make any bracha on it, says Rabbi Yehuda. So we need to now discuss what is considered kilala and what is considered things that we do make brachot, but we just make shahakol on it. So says the Gemara, the limud of Amud Yomi for Chodesh Kislev has been sponsored by Aaron and Miriam as a guri, Leilui Nishmat, Edith but Miriam, that her neshama should have an aliyah, amen. Also should be an Ilui Neshama for Avraham ben Ezra, whose your side is today, and for Refuah Shlema of Behnaz Chaya bat Yafa, that she should have Bezat Hashem Refuah Shlema, amen. Amen. Okay, so we have 12 lines from the bottom. Says the Gemara, my novlot, Val novlot, my novlot, Rabbi Zera Rabbi Eli, Chat Amar, Bushli Kamra, Chat Amar, Tamri Dezika. What is considered novlot? It's machloket Rabbi Zera and Rabbi Eli. One says Bushli Kamra, dates that have been completely dried out in the sun. So therefore, they are very low quality. They've gone bad, basically, because they're completely dried. And on them, says the Mishnah, you say shakol. Chad Amar, Tamri Dezika. The other one says, no, these are dates that have prematurely fallen from the palm tree. Not prematurely that they're not cooked necessarily, but they have fallen by themselves. Before you pick them off the tree, they fell by themselves. So says the Gemara, Tanan, we learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Kol shehu min klala en mivarchin alav. On this, we learned in the Mishnah that Rabbi Yehuda says anything that's min klala, anything that is considered a kilkul or a curse, we don't make any bracha on it. You just eat it without bracha, right? So says the Gemara, wait a second. Do both of these perushim explanations fit the words of Rabbi Yehuda? Bishlama, I understand them on the Amar according to the one that explains Bushli Kamram, that this is dried dates. Hainu de karile min klala. I understand why Rabbi Yehuda calls this min klala, right? Because it's destroyed. It was something good that got destroyed by sun. And therefore is kilkul, event bad, right? Ela leman da'amar, but according to the man da'amar, that explains this to be tamri dezika, of fruits that fell with the wind, the tmarim, the dates that fell from the tree, they're still good tmarim. They didn't go bad. You know, from up there when they fall down, nothing goes bad. They're still good dates. So how can you call them min klala, that they are considered a type of klala? Gemara says ashe'ara. Rabbi Yehuda, according to that man Amar, Rabbi Yehuda is not referring to this, but it's referring to the other two, right? It's referring to vinegar, and it's referring to govai, which is grasshoppers, right? In other words, we have three things in the Mishnah. The Chachamim say you say shakol. It's vinegar, it's novlot, and there is grasshoppers. Should we write this down? There are three things in the Mishnah, and out of those three things, Rabbi Yehuda is not necessarily referring to all three of them according to this mandamar. In other words, you have a machloket, how to understand novlot. This is the big question of what novlot is. Right? This is the big question that we're going to discuss today. So we had in the Mishnah three items, right? We had chometz, which is vinegar. We had novlot, which we don't know what it is, right? And then we had govai, which means grasshoppers, right? So on this, the Mishnah said you make shahakol on all of them. That's Chachamim, right? Chachamim said shahakol. That's Chachamim.
What is meant by Tanakama? Tanakama means
Same, yeah, that's Chachamim, same thing. That's shahakol. And Rabbi Yehuda here holds that you say no bracha, right? So which one is Rabbi Yehuda going on? Is it going on 1, 2, and 3 or not? Now, novelot, which is the second one, the middle one here, we said there's a machloket what novelot means. Does it mean tamri de zika, right? Does it mean things that fell from the tree, dates that fell from the tree, or it means dried up dates that completely got destroyed by the sun, right? So those are the two things that novlot could mean. It's either tamri de zika, which means wind, right? Or that's number two, really. Or it means dry. This is a really real question. So let's call this number one. Tamri de zika means they fell from the tree by the wind, right? So it's either tamri de zika or it's bushli kamra. Bushli kamra means it's been mevushal, it's been completely dried with the sun, right? That's number two. So which one is novelot? Is it this or is it this? That's the machloket that we have in our Mishnah, in our Gemara rather. So it says the Gemara, if novelot is bushli kamra, then I understand why Rabbi Yehuda says you don't say bracha on 1, 2, and 3. Because 1, of course, is grasshoppers. I understand why it's kilala.
why?
Even
Because the destroyer.
yeah. Chometz is also wine that went bad, became vinegar. That's also something that became mekulkal, went bad. And novelot also is something that was good and went bad because it got dried up, right? But if you tell me that the explanation of novelot is tamri de zika, not this, then what's the problem? Why is Rabbi Yehuda calling this a min klala? It's not a min klala. It's just dates that fell down from the tree. They could be still very good quality dates. So why are you calling them min klala? That's the question of the Gemara. Okay?
Isn't dried up fruit also still good?
Now, professionally dried up fruits are very good, yes, but try to put things that are completely dried up and you try to bite in them and you have to go to your dentist afterwards. That's a different story. It's not something that you want to eat. Vinegar also, people do have it. They use it for great things, right? A lot of things that you eat today, they have vinegar in it. But vinegar itself is considered wine that went bad, and therefore it's called min klala. look, I'm assuming that those who ate grasshoppers, they actually liked grasshoppers. Like, you could actually probably find people still nowadays that they eat them in Yemen, in other places. The Yemenite Jews actually have a mesorah of which ones are kosher and so on and so forth. But the non-Jewish Yemenites, they still eat them as their, as their snack. And they probably like it also. But still, because it's considered min klala, Rabbi Yehuda says you don't say bracha on it. So that's not edible. It's that something that normally was not meant to be this, and it became this, and it went down in its quality in process of becoming what it is right now. Right? So says the Gemara. So I understand this manda amar, says the Gemara. But I don't understand this manda amar. I don't understand how in the world Rabbi Yehuda is calling novlot that min klala. The Gemara says, yeah, Rabbi Yehuda is not going on that. According to this manda amar, according to the one that says novelot means tamri de zika, when Rabbi Yehuda says on min klala you don't say bracha, it means number 1 and number 3. Rabbi Yehuda says you don't make bracha on it. But on novlot, he would agree that you say shakol. Right? Rabbi Yehuda didn't say on all 3 of them you don't say bracha. Rabbi Yehuda said on anything that's min klala. So fine, so if novlot means tamri de zika, then they're no longer min klala. So even according to Rabbi Yehuda, you would say shakol on it. They would agree to tarakama, to chachamim, that's shakol. And only on 1 and 3, on chometz and govai, he would say that you don't make any bracha. Gavaldi.
The only 3 instances where you can think of from that something was wrong with the food and we still consume it. It could be many others.
Could be many other ones too. These ones, each one has a different type of, a different category of things going wrong, right? One of them is dried up by the nature. One of them is wine that went sour, went bad, and the other one is none of them. It's just something that creates klala by the mere fact of it being actually very interesting. Once you brought this up, there's Amud Yomi. Amud Yomi says that one of the reasons this is I don't want to call it can of worms. It's something fascinating, really, that opens door to a fascinating and long discussion of why we make brachot on some mitzvot and on some other mitzvot we don't make a bracha, right? Especially considering that the Yerushalmi, learning Talmud Bavli, Yerushalmi in our perek, in Ketzat Nevarchin says that Birkat HaMitzvot is the Oraita. You remember we had a whole discussion of which brachot are the Oraita, and we mentioned Birkat HaMazon is the Oraita, perhaps Birkat HaTorah is the Oraita, but the rest of the brachot are the Rabbanan, Svara. Yerushalmi says Birkat HaMitzvot are the Oraita. Now, why don't we make bracha on a lot of mitzvot, right? For instance, when you give tzedakah, it's a mitzvah Oraita. Kesef talbed ami, the ani imach. This is giving, or just the simple thing of helping a thing, not even lending, but giving actual tzedakah. Why don't we make a bracha on it?
The ani might throw it back in your face.
So that's simple understanding. Actually, the Rashba says like you. Rashba in his tshuvot, in the first volume of his tshuvot, Tshuva Yudchet, right? Siman Yudchet of Sherot Tshuvot Rashba, Rabbi Shlomo ben Aderet, one of the greatest names in the list of the Rishonim, and a prolific writer. He writes in Siman Yudchet that the reason is because you don't know if he's going to accept it, right? You don't know if he's going to accept it. You give the stakah, and you know what it is actually. If you give a dollar to an ani, so if you give 5 cents, what happens? Sometimes he's going to throw it back at you, right? Actually, statistically speaking, there's more chance that the ani is going to refrain from it than an ashir. In other words, if I tell you, I give you $100, right? And you get to give a percentage of it to the guy next to you. But if he doesn't accept it, then both of you get nothing. right? So how much will you give?
Depends how much.
So
I think you would expect.
Sechel would dictate that you'll keep 99 for yourself, you give $1 to him. Because why wouldn't he accept it? If he doesn't accept it, he'll get nothing. So he may as well. But research shows that many people give close to 50%, right? Instead of 1%. And if you do 1%, most people who don't accept it are people who actually are needy. It's very strange, right?
Most people who don't accept
Are the aniyim, right? That's, they don't want to, because their image that is being challenged. And there is a concept that the ani would not accept it. So if it doesn't accept it, then you made the bracha for nothing, right? So therefore, anything that depends on someone else, I don't make the full decision on it. You don't make bracha on it. You don't make a bracha on it. There's this humorous joke that they say about the briskers. Briskers are very careful in mitzvot, in every details of the mitzvot. They say this terrorist comes to kill the brisker yeshiva bacher, and he says, "I want to kill you." He says, "Okay, wait 1 second. I have to make a bracha on kiddush Hashem, right?" So he's singing bracha with kavanah baruch atah Hashem, and he's chuckling and he's yelling the bracha, and this terrorist says, "This guy is nuts," right? And he's yelling and screaming the bracha. And towards the end of the bracha, this terrorist says, "You know what? I'm just not going to kill this guy. This guy, And he says, Al Kiddush Hashem. And the guy is like, not killing him, not shooting. He says, no, I made the bracha. So, it's not up to you. If you give tzedakah, you have to accept the tzedakah for your mitzvah to be going through. By the way, that's one of the reasons that you make bracha of, when you make brit milah. When does the father make lachniso bivrito shel Avraham Avinu? It's whole machloket rishonim, the Ramban, the Rosh, and Shulchan Aruch Paskas, you do it between milah and priya. Even though that you have to make a bracha mitzvah prior to the mitzvah, and this may be birkat mitzvah, but you do it after milah, before priya. Why? Because once you didn't do priya yet, still haven't finished the mitzvah, you could say bracha. Because if you do milah and not priya, it's like you didn't do milah at all. But if you say the bracha before, says the Rambam, we are concerned. Imagine you say the bracha, right? Lachniso bivrito shel Avraham Avinu, and then the Moher says, you know what, I just don't want to do it. Last second. So your bracha was labatala, right? It's not up to you, so you have to say it in a way that after he already caught, now it just he started the mitzvah already, so you know that for sure he's got to finish it, you say the bracha. So that's what Avud Ram says. The reason for it is because it's a klala. Because there's a concept of this guy is a poor guy. Now, you feel all good about yourself that you're giving tzedakah, but every tzedakah involves an ani. So there is an ani, there's a person that doesn't have what he needs, that's considered klala. That's considered, something imperfect in the creation. Hashem wants it to be like that, but nevertheless, you don't make a bracha on your ability to help when somebody else has to be needy in order for you to be able to do that mitzvah. That similar thing to this has been brought for why you don't make shehyanu on leather shoes, because you have to kill an animal in order to have that, or the Hasidic fur shtreimel, that they have to kill 6 animals to get 1 shtreimel. So that's not something that you would want to make bracha on. Again, these are logics and reasons that are in the Rishonim. This again goes back to your question. So says the Gemara. So long answer for a short question. Says the Gemara, but an important one. So according to this man the Amar, what you have, Rabbi Yehuda is only on 1 and 3, and it's not going back on the second one. So says the Gemara, Ika de Amri, there are others who explain this a little different. According to the explanation that novlot, our very novelot over here, is bushli de kamra, is dried up fruits, dried up dates, then I understand. That's why we make shakol on them, according to Tanakama, according to Chachamim, you say shakol. But if you say that it's not bushli the kamra, but if you say it is tamri the zika, that dates that fell with the wind, why do you say shakol on it? There's good dates. You should make Ela benovlot stama. So this is the maskana of the Gemara here, a semi-maskana. Gemara says, you know what? Whenever the Mishnah says novlot, just the word novlot, which is our Mishnah also, just the word novlot always means what? Kule alma lo peligi. Nobody disagrees on novlot. That means bushli kamra. Everyone agrees. Both Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda and everyone else holds that novlot equals bushli kamra, right? Means dried up dates. Peligi, you know what the machloket is? This machloket that we mentioned, some say is tamri de zika, the dates that fell with the wind, and some hold it bushli kamra. That machloket is only in novlot timara. When Chazal say novlot timara, not novlot plain, but novlot timara. When they say novlot timara, then is machloket if it means tamri de zika or bushli kamra. So says the Gemara, Ditznan. It's a different Mishnah. We learned, and this is about Maaserot. Hakalin shebedemai. There are certain built-in leniencies in the halachot of demai. Rabotai, what's demai? Demai means da mai. What is this? Whenever you have safek, when you buy something, if the guy has taken maaserot or not, right? If you have a field and you have 100 pounds of produce, right? So then you have to take teruma from it. You have to take maaser from it. It's your mitzvah to take maaser. Now, when I buy it from you, I trust that you have given maaser. That's only if you come to Amud Yomi, right? If you have an amaretz, if you have an ignorant that sells you something, the Gemara says even amaretz always gives teruma. A, because teruma, if you don't give your hayab mita. B, because teruma, midoraita, you give 1 grain teruma, it's good to go. There's no shiur midoraita. Midrabanan, we do tere mimea, teruma, tere mimea, 2%, right? Tere, 2 mimea from 100. But maaser, first of all, it's not chiyuv mita. Secondly, it's 10%, it's a lot, right? So we don't know if you could trust in amaretz, an ignorant, that he has separated maaser. So when you buy from them, you have to do your own maaser, right? But there are certain leniencies in demai, in something that you don't know if truma, if maaser was taken off from. If you don't know, there are certain built-in leniencies. One of the leniencies is this. Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah. We learned in the Mishnah, in the halachot of demai, hakalin sheba demai. One of the leniencies that we have in demai, that you don't have to give maaser if you buy these items that are lower quality and people don't really care about them so much. We say even the amaretz would take maaser from them because he doesn't have a lot to lose. These are low quality stuff. What are they? Hashitin, v'arimin, v'auzradin, benot shuach, benot shikma, v'gufnin, v'nispa, v'novelot tmara. So you see, novelot tmara is at the very end. So what are these? Shitin, amar avarchana, amar yochanan, mintenin. It's a kind of wild desert figs. Rimin is a type of rimon, right? It's candy. Ha'uzradin is tulshi. Benot shuach, amar avarchana, amar yochanan, te'eni chivarta is some type of white figs. Benot shikma, amar avarchana, amar yochanan is dubli. Gufanin is shili gufni, right? It's gufanin is shili gufni. Nispa is our own slaf that we discussed before, and novlot mara is machloket. Now we put names on the machloket. Rabbi Il'a v'Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Il'a and Rabbi Zera, Chal Amar Bushni Kamra. One of them says it's Bushni Kamra, and one of them says it's Tamri Dezika. So now we come back to our machloket, but it's not about novlot. Novlot, everybody agrees. When the Mishnah or Braita tells you novlot stam, just plain novlot, is talking about Bushni Kamra, is dried up fruits. But if the Mishnah tells you novlot temara, right? When you have novlot temara, then it's machloket which one of these two it is, right? So says the Gemara, so it says, let's understand that Mishnah now, right? According to the Mandamar that holds that it is Bushli the Kamra, according to the Mandamar that holds Novlot Mara means dried up dates, then I understand why it is Hakalin Shabbat Demai. Is considered one of the leniencies of halachot of demai that you have safek if they have been given maaser on or not. If you have dried up fruits, so then if you have safek, if the guy that sold it to me has taken maaser off, then you're patur. Well, how about if you have vada, you know for sure he didn't take off maaser, right? Then it's chayav. I understand, because these are correct that they're low quality fruits, but they are low quality fruits that are owned by somebody. But what's the halacha by tamri dezika? When fruits fall from the tree, what's their status? Their status is hefker. What's hefker? It's ownerless. Something that's hefker, do you have to give maaser from it? No. Why is it hefker, by the way? Because once it falls from the tree, all the creatures under the ground, the ants and and the creatures crawling on the ground, and animals that walk on the ground, all of those are going to be there to damage them. And they usually end up being damaged seriously, if not completely eaten up, right? And therefore, when they fall, the owners already give up hope mentally from anything that falls down. So anything that falls down from the ground already is considered halachic status of hefker. And therefore, even if it's vadai that he did not take maaser from it, it's patur from maaser. So how can it even be in the Mishnah of Demai? Forget about Demai of Tamri Dezika, even Vadai of Tamri Dezika, even if it for sure would be not taken tithes from, still would be patur from tithes from Maaser. So how in the world can you explain the Mishnah that Novlot Tumara means Tamri Dezika? It can't be Tamri Dezika. The Gemara says, no, it can be. I'm reading it ahead of the time. I'm explaining it ahead of time. We'll read it inside. Gemara says it can be. You're correct that Tamri Dezika would be considered hefker, and therefore it would be patur. But if you take these fruits and you gather them on a pile, you go and choose the good ones of any fallen fruit, and you make a pile out of them, then midarabanan you have to give maaser. Not midoraita, not biblically, but midarabanan, because it looks like a real pile of fruits. Then Chazal said midrabanan, you should give maaser on it, even though that you took it from hefker and should be patur in biblical level from maaser. But midrabanan, because you piled it up and you made a serious pile, midrabanan is chayav b'maaser. So therefore, when we say novlot tamara demai, you could be if you buy it from Amaretz, you could be lenient not to have maaser. We're talking about the case that the Amaretz piled up the ones that fell, and he's selling it for a cheaper price. He says these are the things that fell, so it's $1 a pound instead of $10 a pound, right? And you're buying from him. Then the Mishnah tells you in the Mai, if the seller is Amaretz, you don't have to take maaser from it because the whole thing is the Rabbanan anyways, right? and this is low quality. That's what it's talking about. Tamri de Zika.
Even if there's only one in the pile,
No, they piled up the good ones. Of
the
course, even the good ones are lower quality, but it is, they piled up all the good ones, and now it looks like a pile of dates. Then you have to midrabbanan, you have to give maser from it. It's not midoraita because they were hefker. They're all from hefker. But you still have to give because it looks like a real serious pile of fruits.
Isn't there a higher chance that it's inside of this product? It's not that
Probably yes. So you have to check them before you eat them, take the creatures out. Yes. So, well, that's why anything that grows on the ground. You have romaine lettuce. Most of the time is asparagus. All this many of the berries are blackberries, mulberries, raspberries are full of creatures. Yeah. So it says that's not a box checking shoe right now, but that's some of these fruits you can't really fix them. Says the Gemara.
The Tamri de Zika is first item because it fell and it's out of the
No.
Why is it a first item? Just the Jaguar. What about the wind?
No, according to what we're saying right now, Tamri de Zika is not even min klala. That's what we said before, right? That Rabbi Yehuda, if you say Tamri de Zika, Rabbi Yehuda is saying on two items only, on grasshoppers and on vinegar, is not going on. So says the Gemara. We understand why only if you have doubts if the seller took tithes off, that you're patur. If it would be vada, you would be chayav. But if you go according to the Manda Amar that holds Tamri de Zika, that this is dates that fell with the wind, vada'an chayav. How in the world would, even if it's for sure that's not tied, it should be patur? Hefker aninu, they're hefker, they're ownerless. They fell there. The owners don't want things that fall on the ground. They usually don't take them. Says, you're correct, but here we're talking about the case that this guy made a whole pile out of them. The Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, last line, that Rabbi Yochanan said in the name of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, when you go through a land and you are an ani, for instance, right, and you're gathering the leftovers of the harvest, leket shicha pe'ah, things that they forgot. So usually you will be patur from maser. But if you had a whole lot of them and you piled up, you gathered, you piled up leket shicha pe'ah to a pile, then hukve'u lemaser, then they now need to be given maser from midrabanan. So says the Gemara, bishlama ikadamri. There are those who say, top of the Amud, bishlama namanamar tamri de zika hainu, the hacha kari le novlot stama. According to the Manda Amar, according to the explanation that novlot tmara means tamri de zika, that means novlot tmara is the first one over here, the dates that fell from the tree. Hainu dacha kari le novlot stama. I understand why in the Mishnah, in Masechet Berachot, in Daf Mem, calls it novlot without novlot tmara, just novlot, because we said novlot is referring to, remember, novlot is referring to the dried up, and novlot tmara is referring to this, so it fits great. That means Mishnaic language is extremely precise. Whenever Mishnah tells you novlot, we know it's referring to this. Whenever it tells you novlot tmara, it's referring to this, right? But if you tell me that both of them means bushli kamra, if you mean novlot tmara in Masechet Demai means bushli kamra, then wait a second. Mishnah in Berachot Daf Mem says novlot alone, and we said it means bushli kamra. The Mishnah in Demai talks about novlot tmara together, and also we say it means bushli kamra. So novlot means bushli kamra, novlot tmara means bushli kamra. That doesn't make sense. Call it either novlot or novlot tmara. Why do you call that different things? And both of those things mean the same thing, means bushli kamra, dates that have been dried up in sun. You with me? Yes? Kind of? Again, the Mishnah in Masechet Berachot says novlot, and we translate that novlot alone means bushli kamra, dried up dates. And the Mishnah in Masechet Debai says novlot tmara, and novlot tmara also we call bushli kamra. So call it one thing. Why do you call it novlot in one place and novlot tmara in a different place? It's Gemara. And on Amar bushli kamra, Edi ve'edi novlot tmara, or Edi ve'edi novlot stama, and the Gemara says kasha. Itaka, you have a good question. You have a good question why the Mishnaic language, according to that Mandamar, Mishnah is usually very precise. And he says you have a good question. It's a kasha means it's a question that has an answer. This is not a super strong question. There's kasha, there's tufta, and there's tufta the tufta, right? The three levels of questions in the Gemara. This is the lowest level of question. It means I could answer it, but you're asking a good question, right? Why the languages don't seem to be exactly precise. That's something that Gemara leaves as a question, but it's a question that could be answered. Bezrat Hashem will pick this up in the days to come.